All right. So the reason that I brought everybody together today was to talk about continuing education. I'm Stephanie. I started this group called USO LMT. And what it is basically a new association for massage therapists. We're wanting to get people together to start trying to come up with concrete actions to solve some of the problems in our industry that we see people talking about all the time. And to kind of explore those problems, do some research, maybe even get together to do some projects about these problems. And then on the other side of it is to help the workers in our industry. So part of it is an advocacy program that will basically just directly help workers if they have issues like wage theft or an unethical employer that they're dealing with. They can call us and we can help them get them to the proper avenues for reporting situations like that, or even do some coaching just to kind of help them through the problems. So it's kind of twofold. The model is kind of like a worker center. So I don't know if you've ever heard of a worker center. They're pretty new in the United States. There's a couple hundred of them across the country. And really, there's a lot of freedom in working like this, where we can get people together. We can work on the political aspects of our industry. We can help with legislative issues and things like that. And then also work in the workplace. And then on this, at the same token, we can help and promote LMT owned businesses. So it's really cool. It's a really neat idea, something that hasn't been tried before. And I'm really excited about it and, looking to see kind of where this is going to go. So this is one of our focus groups projects. So I did one, I have a focus group on Facebook going right now that I started in January. And it's a 90-day group that was focused on just human trafficking, kind of learning the ins and outs of that. We talked about massage establishment licensing in there and whether or not that helps the issue with human trafficking. There's a lot of stuff in there from the Polaris Project. And then this month, I focused on continuing education and then wanted to bring this together. And then next month, I'm going to start talking about diversity in our field and how we can increase that. So thank you guys all for being here. Really appreciate it. And so I want to kind of get started with our agenda. So I'm just going to pull that up here real quick. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is any CE provider concerns or challenges that you may have had in the industry. So I wanted to know, in Arizona, we recently had a situation where our governor review board is looking to take out CE required hours. And I'm wondering if you're concerned, if any of your states that don't have continuing education requirements in place, or if that happened if they took away continuing education hours, what would you do about your business? How do you think that would affect you, and how would you be able to address it? So anybody can chime in here.
Okay, so I do have CE programs. We don't have a requirement in Mass, and massage therapists want to do CEs, and so do other body workers. Reiki people want to, yoga people want to, reflexologists want to. So truthfully, in my state, just speaking for myself, I'm glad we don't have a requirement, because when we finally got a massage board, they made a big mess out of it. So it's Massachusetts. Okay. And everything is legislated and costs money and da-da-da. And they tried, I'm sure the human trafficking probably everywhere, they tried to make a bill that basically sat on the back of all of the unlicensed providers like Reflexology, Feldenkrais, Reiki, and have that be the reason there was human trafficking. Okay. So I don't think it's going to one way or the other. I think if we have to do it, we'll do it. But I find massage therapists want to learn. Mm-hmm. I've been doing this for 51 years and I still want to learn. So
wow, that's a long time.
I know.
I want to kind of backtrack and have everybody introduce themselves really quick. So Valerie, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I've been doing this, like I said, for 51 years, which I was like, is that true? But you know, I I love what I do. I do also love to teach. And I've run my own school. I've run other people's schools. My favorite program was running it in a community college, actually, believe it or not. I absolutely loved it. And I love touching people. So, you know, this is a heart-centered work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And every day when I go to work, I mean, I'm not doing as many as I used to, that's for sure. But I love it. So I'm 72 and I'll probably keep doing it until I'm not here on the earth because
Amazing.
I love it. So, you know, I'm very interested in this because when you have one name in the game that's controlling everything, it does, you know, it's very one-sided and you don't have a lot of input into how things can be.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Well, let's have everybody else introduce themselves. Who wants to go next?
People.
Stacey, do you want to go next down there? Kelly? Okay.
Yeah, my name is Kelly Bowers. I'm in Durham, North Carolina. I have been practicing for 21 years. I am both a massage therapist and a continuing ed provider. I've been doing the continuing ed thing for 10 years now. I have a focus in my continuing ed that's not common. I teach business to massage therapists, and that's its own bit of weirdness because massage therapists will say all the time, I need business education. I go, here's a class. And I go, there's this modality I was thinking of learning. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, I have to pay for it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's fun. That's heaps of fun. I intend to retire from hands-on work in about 4 years when I hit 65, and then devote the rest of my time, whatever I've got energy for after that, to just the continuing ed stuff.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Who else? Kevin, you want to go next?
Sure, I'll go. My name is Kevin Ramsey. Been a therapist since 2011, so 10 years. Relatively new to the game, I suppose, considering the experience that we have here. I'm a continued ed provider. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. I've been a NCB TNB approved provider for the past 3. And I really love diversity in the practice and diversity in my classes. So I teach, medical massage, therapeutic type practices, kind of corrective type work. That's what got me into the game due to my own, injuries. And then I also teach, different modalities that, I see as very, I guess, popular or highly requested, things like hot stone and prenatal massage, both have their own applications. I think all forms of body work really have their own application. So if I have experience with it, I would love to share that experience with whoever wants to take my class. End of 2019, I was appointed to the Arizona State Board of Massage Therapy. And so it's really opened my eyes into how does the state level work? How do the legislative processes and the kind of high level communications work when it comes to, the laws and rules that are drafted for our industry? And so it's been a really interesting process, if not a little bit sometimes overwhelming, but it is interesting to learn that side of kind of what we do and how it's regulated and be a part of it.
All right, Jackie, I think it's your turn. Jacqueline.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Tibbett. I was originally licensed in New York in 2012, and since then moved to Florida and got my license here and did my PhD here. And now I am practicing massage therapist. I actually just started working for a continuing education institute and helping them move their platform online. And I actually this week submitted my resume. We're going to get me approved to be a provider. So most of my CE credit experience has been related to anything related to fascia. So I've done some things with structural integration and myofascial release and trigger point work as well. I love all types of massage. I've also worked at a spa, but I have more experience in fascial related courses. in education.
And Danelle, do you want to go?
Sure.
Right.
My name is Danelle. I'm in Springfield, Missouri, and I have been a massage therapist also since 2011. And I've been in massage therapy education for 4 years now, on the program manager level and as an instructor and clinic manager, all that stuff. And so I'm actually just now looking to getting into offering continuing education. And so, you know, just starting that process of beginning that kind of on my own or with colleagues. One of my colleagues is here today, so she should go next. And I really like to focus on pain relief, specifically things like, you know, I do a lot of neuromuscular work when I do my own work, but also my specialty in hot stone massage and prenatal and infant massage may come into handy there as well. But I'm also really interested in the business side of it and teaching that part to massage therapists. I think in our market, we have a really big gap in the education for massage therapists where they're just not getting the business knowledge and know-how that they need to in order to make it. So we have a lot of very short careers here in the middle of America. So.
All right. And then Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy Back, and I'm also in Springfield, Missouri. Danelle and I have actually known each other for many years, worked together for several of those years. I have been licensed since 2010, and I kind of have a similar background to Danelle. We were both at the same school here recently. I just kind of left there very recently, but I've worked in several different environments, destination spa, boutique spa. I kind of like the more wellness, relaxation, taking you out of your stressful life. Not that I don't enjoy pain relief, but I really, really like just helping with stress more. I also taught, I actually taught at the same place where Danelle was. We've kind of had the same, jobs basically at the school. So I've also managed the clinic, and I did a year in the program manager position for the school, and I just very recently left that. So I agree with Danelle, like we have this huge gap. I have students, I haven't been at the school for about a month, and I have students almost every day, graduates, asking me business questions. So there's just a big gap there, and I would really, really like to dip my toes in and teaching that kind of business stuff too as a CE. I've done a little bit. My husband is a chiropractor and doctor of Chinese medicine, and we have done CEs before, but I wasn't the one teaching it. I was just kind of the business side of it. So it'll be fun to, you know, learn how to kind of take that on, you know, as an instructor, and hopefully Danelle and I will be kind of joining forces for that. So that's all I got.
And Maria.
I am in Arizona. I'm also a displaced New Yorker though. And I specialize in Aromatherapy and in John Barnes myofascial release, more somato-emotional type focus in my practice. Been in private practice for 20 years. I'm also an acupuncturist and an Enneagram informed spiritual director. And I also practice the Bach flower remedies for 20 years. So that's pretty much the background. As far as teaching, I was a CEU provider and let it lapse because life kind of got large with other things that I was doing and the cost factor. My passion when I was teaching, I have the approval to teach aromatherapy by the woman that holds the trademark now. And so there's that, and business as well, very passionate about that, but equally passionate about teaching ethics. That's one of my biggest things to keep therapists safe, because too many of them don't get that. And too many of them have such big, beautiful hearts, and they need that structure to keep themselves and their clients safe.
Mhm. Okay, and I don't think Mark is here with us right now, so we'll wait for him later. So let's kind of get back to the question. So we were talking about continuing education, and Kevin, I was hoping maybe you'd speak to this a little bit. What about continuing education requirements, and what would happen? What do you think would happen here if we didn't have those requirements?
So my experience has only been in Arizona, but one thing that's really struck me, this past year is to try and learn as much as I could about, what happens in other states and how are therapists kind of publicly acknowledged in other states, my experience here in the past 3 years teaching classes is pretty positive. I get tons of people coming in. I really want to learn this modality. I really am excited to learn whatever topic I'm teaching that day. But just as many people that I get on that side of the fence, I also get, it's pretty even, 50-50 of the amount of people that are just there because I have to get continuing education.
Mhm.
And me as an educator and as a lifelong student, I just love soaking up whatever I can learn. It can be on any topic. It's often frustrating for me to encounter those people and say, why wouldn't you want to learn more about your craft, and why wouldn't you want to grow your knowledge base and be able to apply more to your practice? But I also have to take a step back and recognize that not everybody is going to look at their career the same way that I do. But so I do see somewhat of a division in kind of the professional industry's opinion on continuing education. Lots of people are glad that it is mandatory because otherwise they would put it off, or maybe they wouldn't make the time to go seek that education a lot. And then a lot of people wish it wasn't mandatory because they're in their practice. They practice what they want to. They don't really have the time or the money or the availability to go off and take a course. And then there's also the idea of, therapists that have been doing this for 10, 15, 20 plus years, that they really have an idea of how their business wants to be structured. They have, their style that they promote, or they have their business really set in stone. And, how much is that, mandatory experience going to add to their practice after that much time? And so, when talking about the mandatory education numbers, I'm the type of individual that likes to see things from both sides, and so that can sometimes leave me pretty indecisive. But at the same time, I think it allows me to walk forward with more points of view that I've tried to at least understand. And I'm kind of somewhere on the fence with this too. I know that early in my career, I was really into the medical side of things. I worked in chiropractic and doctors' offices, really helping people with injuries or post-surgery, along with, pain relief. And I was really glad that I was like, hey, I got to make sure that I get my 24 hours. And then I got into things that I didn't think I would be interested in, like aromatherapy, and at the time, hot stone. And even some of my clients told me, they were getting pregnant, and I tried to recommend them out. And because I didn't have any prenatal training at the time, and they said, no, you go get certified because we're sticking with you. And so I'm glad that I was able to seek out these other modalities that I wasn't initially interested in. It was just, I wonder what that's all about. And then, I'm not sure that I would have done that had the mandatory hours not been in place. But on the flip side, if mandatory hours are lifted, then I wonder how that might affect the CE providers here, at least in the state. Their businesses are hurting. This past year, I've had several of them reach out to me because they know that I'm on the board and that this discussion is coming from the Regulatory Review Council, and they're concerned that their businesses will take a major hit, if it if the CE waivers continue and if the hours are dropped. As an update, I know that you were there at the last meeting, Stephanie, but as an update, that that bullet point has been removed from the most immediate list of things that's going on with the review council. So, I'm not sure that that's a very definitive answer to the question, but it is, kind of both sides that I've been mulling over back and forth. So.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any comments on that?
Yep, I'm out here in North Carolina, and before I moved here 4 years ago, I was in DC. And I would say that those are both regulated states and states, DC, but they have been for a while. And I think the answers would be exactly the same for us. If you drop the CE requirements, some segment of our population would continue to get continuing education because they are just driven learners. But there'd be a bigger chunk, and there'd be another chunk that'd be like, I don't need to do that anymore. And then there'd be some in the middle that would be, and this probably would have been me early in my career, like, yeah, I want to do that, but I'm not making much money. Oh my God, now I got to take care of this. And it would sort of fall by the wayside. The problem, of course, for the consumer is they are all licensed the same way. So I think that's kind of true, quite possibly across the country, that if you take CE requirements away, some people will keep doing it on their own. Some people walk away and never look back. Some people will have good intentions, but kind of not get around to it because life. This would also affect things like the AMTA National Conference, because getting CEs there is part of a big attraction to why people go to that. And at the state level, that's another part of the big attraction, is that the CEs are built into the conference registration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that too, kind of on a bigger scale, that it would affect a lot of things. I mean, the draw of ABMP seems to be they have so many free continuing education hours, but like, are people going to still watch them, or are people going to still try to get those, if that isn't a requirement? So yeah. And then Mark, I know he's not here right now, but he had asked me about this kind of on a national level, where we were as far as how many hands-on you can get versus how many in person you can get. And I did find a resource for that. So if anybody's interested, Massage Practice Builder, Julie Onofrio, she has a resource. And if you're interested, I can send it to you about what they have nationally and kind of where states are right now. Like in Arizona, it's 12 hands-on is what it was, and then 12 online. So if you want a resource like that, there is one out there somewhere. Okay, and then let's go to our next question. Let's see what I got here. All right, the NCB TMB, I want to talk about them a little bit and find out if any of you guys have had any issues with getting your courses approved or getting your approved provider status, costs, any kind of like ongoing submission cost issues. Has anything like that been an issue for you as a NCB TMB approved provider? Anybody?
I can go on that one if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be way more complicated than it was when I first started a few years ago. NCB-TMB has a great website that has dozens of FAQs, frequently asked questions that you can peruse. And I utilized every single one of those questions to make sure that my formats that I were putting in were correct, that the composition of my classes kind of met the criteria that needed to be met. As far as any issues, I haven't had any like frustrating issues that bothered me. The only class so far that I've had hiccups with has been a non-live class. And so just last year I submitted a distance learning online, like a presentation for sexual harassment prevention in the workplace. It was a 1-hour course. It was, mainly PowerPoint basis. And then there's like a test that comes at the end. I had misinterpreted how the minutes actually calculate at the end of it. And so it was about 40 minutes worth of presentation. And then it was 12, it was 15 questions. Now it's about 12. And I had misinterpreted how many of those quiz questions translate into class hours. And so it turns out that they don't do it by the quarter hour. So it turns out that what I had submitted only counts as a half hour rather than a full hour. And that's what the criteria is looking to meet. But I mean, other than that, they've been pretty open to just say, hey, maybe change this verbiage real quick. And then, but otherwise I haven't had any hiccups in the classes that I've submitted. So I guess I must be, following the guidelines pretty well. I'd like to think that they're pretty clear on the website.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. The only thing that I've heard was from a CE provider here who owns a school down in Tucson. She said really just the wording was really the only thing, like just a simple thing. Like she had a class and it was like herbal therapy, and she didn't add massage to it, and they didn't approve it. But then she just changed the title to herbal therapy and massage, and then it was fine. So
yeah, I also have a self-care class, and I just made sure that I put in self-care, for therapists, and it didn't come back with any hits on it. So
okay. Anything else with the NCBTMB?
I've
All right.
I find them administratively behind the scenes kind of a mess. For example, I submitted a new course in November, October, which is when they said, oh yeah, your status expired a couple of months ago. I'm like, oh, would have been nice to get a heads up that you wanted me to renew my status. And of course, they're at lower staffing than usual. So what should have taken a couple of weeks took 2 months, which just pushed everything out. And I've called them and said, I'd really like to be able to see who else is teaching business. Oh, you can't look things up that way. And so I couldn't look things up by who teaches in this category. Who are the other providers? You can't look things up that way. We don't permit that anymore. I'm just like, you guys just always find some way to make life more difficult. And I'm glad they've cleaned up the process for applying to be a provider, because when I did it 10 years ago, it was a 35-page form online and you couldn't save it. You had to print out every page as you filled it out, because once you shut down, all your work went away. And it's hard to fill out 35 pages in one sitting.
Yeah.
So they make changes, but they make them slowly. Administratively, I just find them not as tight as I'd like them to be.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then Valerie, did you have a comment on that too? Oh, Valerie, you're muted.
Duh.
There
It's kind of going along with what you said. We are in 2021. Last year, a lot of us did hybrid teaching, which NCBTMB does not approve. Why? I mean, they've got to catch up, and that's basically, I think, what it is they're not caught up. Their website is abysmal. It's pretty bad. The signing up's been fine as far as, it was pages and pages though before. Maybe that's changed. But why can't we do hybrid courses? Why haven't they caught up to that? So I guess maybe my point is exactly what Kelly was just saying, is that they're a little bit behind the times. They're a little slow in catching up. Part of that's because they're understaffed. They do now have massage therapists finally making decisions, which they didn't before. And now they have that. So, I mean, I'd like them to catch up because we're all moving ahead. And we're, working with people who use Zoom. And I mean, I'm going to probably always be old fashioned as far as my hands-on classes go. I've tried doing the hands-on on Zoom and I don't like it because I want to touch people. But all the didactic stuff can be on Zoom. So why can't that be a combo? I don't get it. So I guess that would be other than that, I've had a great time working with them, but I just wish they would, come into the new generation, the Aquarian age.
Yeah. Is it when you submit a course to them, is it less hours if it's a Zoom course? If you have anything online, do you guys know? Do they approve less hours for that?
I mean, an hour didactic is an hour didactic.
Okay.
Right? I'm pretty sure. But you do have to break it down. You have to know what you're really doing. They do have it all there for you. And you have to write it the right way. And they are very helpful about telling you if you're not writing it the right way. But I just would like them to kind of catch up to where we are. Because we're moving ahead.
And if you take a live course and convert it to online, they'll take whatever the hours were in a live for the live course and assign it to the online. And the fact is my live courses take longer than online courses because of student interaction and engagement and questioning. So that's kind of nice. I'm not sure it's right, but I like it.
Yeah, I just wish that everybody would be on the same page though, so that we can move forward and really give what we want to for the students to get it. Because I agree with what those who are talking about what people want. People do want to learn, and the people who don't want to learn aren't going to. They're going to be happy with where they are, and that's what they love, and that's how they're going to stay. They don't want to learn anything new. And maybe they won't be in it for years and years, or maybe they will, and they'll do a wonderful, fantastic, beautiful massage. They just don't want to be students anymore. And then there's the rest of us that geek out and want to constantly learn. Okay, I'm muting.
All right. Hey, Mark, do you want to unmute and introduce yourself really quick?
Sure. My name is Mark Olson. I'm director of a massage school in Kauai, where we do not have any CE requirements. And I've been a massage therapist for 20 years.
Awesome. I'm going to come work at your school, okay?
Okay.
All right. So the next question. So Mark, we did answer some of your questions that you had just in this last conversation. So when you go back and watch the replay,
okay,
you'll be able to have that information. Okay. But I want to keep going on. I wanted to talk about the Federation, the FSMTB now. So they have this directory listing that you can get as a CE provider. And I wanted to kind of bring up what happened with Hillwell. I don't know if a lot of you guys saw the blog that they had posted, that they were trying to get their human trafficking course approved by NCBTMB, and they would not approve it. So then they just went through the FSMTB directory listing, and they're just going to go with that from now on. So I'm wondering, how aware are you guys of this? And, have you considered doing that as well?
I looked into FSMTB. Most of my courses are short courses because it's business. I don't want to overwhelm people. I'm hoping short courses will work for them. What they charge, it comes down to money. Their annual fees are high and their per course fee is high. I think it's great if you're well established as a CE provider, or you teach the bigger courses where maybe you only got 1 or 2 courses. Financially, that's fine. But financially for the smaller ones, and Laura Allen commented, I don't know if y'all know Laura Allen is a CE provider. She talked about this recently too, that's the only thing keeping her out of it. And she's a very well-established CE provider and massage therapist. I think their price, NCBTMB looked at the same pricing style maybe 8 or 9 years ago and walked away from it. Like that's not going to work for us. And it's going to keep a lot of smaller CE providers away from FSMTB. And one of my concerns is that with the continuing ed that comes from within that we're developing for ourselves is often smaller classes, not as much reach, and we can't afford to be paying, well, for me would be 50 to 70% of my income in a year to be registered with FSMTB. So we're kind of tamping down the ability for the small CE provider to thrive in this environment.
Anybody else have any comments on that? Kevin?
I didn't actually know that FSMTB was a continuing ed provider. I saw a couple of years ago they had like the CE registry that launched, which I thought was a cool idea. I did look into it, and I didn't see any functionality that wasn't there through the national certification board that you could go search, find specific approved provider or specific modality, and so it's paying an extra. I think it was like $30 per course to be able to be searched through them. Didn't provide a whole lot of benefit to me, but I didn't look any more into it after I initially looked up because it's not approved for Arizona. So, that was pretty much where I made up my mind there. I'm going to stick with what I know is working and what has worked in the past. So,
Right. It looks like they are trying to get that approved through
Yeah.
more states. And they have a listing of courses that they'll approve and not approve. So maybe, go back on there and check it out and see kind of what the new details are, because it looks like they're working on that program right now.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Anybody else have anything on that? Okay. All right. And then let's see. I want to talk about course updates. So I've been hearing this a lot in the massage groups, and I can't imagine that's actually happening, but I think a lot of people are thinking that the CE providers are sometimes not updating their courses with the times. And so I wanted to talk about that. Like, how often are you updating your courses with new research and things like that? So do you guys want to just chime in whenever and talk about that one?
I'll go. Oh, okay, go ahead. You go, Kevin.
Okay.
Sure. I don't want to be always jumping in first here, but I'm much more of a listener until I'm in my practice zone of my classroom.
Don't you find every time you teach though that it's different?
It is. It's.
Yeah.
I always think I know exactly how my cadence is going to go, and then that's at the window in the first 15
Yeah.
minutes, and it just is more fun than anything. So I've only been a teacher for about 3 years, and so I haven't really updated my classes much since then. I did just renew at the beginning of the year, since it's every 3 years. But I'm probably one of the few therapists that I know. I have dozens of colleagues that haven't entered teaching. They're still full-time therapists. And I talk to them about research, and they're like, I don't even, where is this research? Where does it exist? And all these things. I have bookmarks on my browser of 5 websites that I regularly just go into. I'm like, I'm curious about such and such with massage, and I'll type it in, and there'll be pages of research, and it's just amazing to see how much is available to really digest and really soak up from massage research communities. What can be definitively said about massage and its applications towards healthcare. And so I have a new course coming out that can be taught live, and it can be taught as well, I guess online, I suppose. And I'm curious to know, Valerie, since what you said about hybrid classes, I'm curious to know if they're going to approve it in that format. But I utilize a lot of what I read about in the research, and I just provide copies of the research because it's free material that I can download and save to my own computer, and so I can share that with the classroom. I have a research article that I utilize in my self-care class. And so come, I would say probably in a year or two, I'm going to look back into certain, research updates, because it's a good point that, I want to make sure that my classes don't become outdated. I would say just as much as I look at the massage research, I have to also kind of come again with a balance and respect for the anecdotal practice of massage therapy. It's been around for thousands of years before people sat down and started doing this research. And so, I try and blend both of those sort of understandings of education together to what do we know based on history of massage, and what do we know based on kind of modern modern devices that can help us determine what are the anatomical functions of massage, what are the outcomes that that we can record and that we can change in the body. And I think it's fascinating. It's probably not within the wheelhouse of a lot of massage therapists, but I hope to bring that blending together to keep it interesting for those therapists that don't care about the science or the numbers or reading those articles, because they are pretty complicated and sometimes hard to translate. But I think research is widely important. And then with the last couple of years, with massage therapy being recognized as a healthcare supplement or as an alternative to certain practices or treatments that have been, I guess, plaguing the healthcare industry, it'll be interesting to see how much more quickly it evolves and how much more research will become available as time goes on.
And to add to what you have to say, or piggyback off of it, a lot of my classes are on reflexology, and I've written books on it, and I'm always researching it. And I find every single time I teach a class, I teach it differently. depending upon the students in the class. So I'm reading their energy, and some people really love all the new stuff and everything that's happened. They want to know everything. So that's what they get. But there are others who want to learn the protocol and they're interested in some of it and they just want the hands-on and they want to do it. So that's the kind of teacher I am. And speaking to hybrid, I love hybrid classes. And because I taught in a college that had the most fabulous IT that you could ever imagine, so that, anytime you wanted to do something, they were right there to fix it for you. It is a great way to learn and it's a great way to teach. And everything is vital and alive because it's so organic. So I don't know. I think that people who teach probably do upgrade their classes, but maybe people are looking for something different. Maybe people just want a straight research class. I myself don't want to teach a straight research class. So, but I'm sure there are people who want those. I just wouldn't be the teacher for them. So anyway.
Right. And then Janelle, did you have something there?
Yeah, I might be the teacher for that. So I actually, me and Stacy both. So I recently rewrote some of the curriculum for the Allied Health School where I work. And in that rewrite, whoops, I didn't mean to raise my hand again. I included a unit on research literacy, how to find research, understand it, proper ways to write research, because if we don't have new therapists coming into the field who want to do the research, then it won't exist anymore. It's going to die out eventually. And unfortunately, I haven't found a lot of new students who are, passionate about that part of it, but that's okay, because they will come. Anyway, so somewhat disappointingly to me, when I wrote in this unit on research literacy, I got a call from our main campus. We have 4 campuses in our school in different areas of the Midwest. And I got a call from our main campus and they asked me, why do we need to talk about research literacy? Why did you include this? And they wanted me to back up my decision to have this in the class. And that was kind of disappointing to me. Eventually they did see it my way, but I do think I'm pretty passionate about research and staying, just knowledgeable about new developments and what we're finding and things like that. Well, it doesn't mean we have to throw out, the anecdotal part of it, because that is an important part. Just like you said, I think it's really important. And so I think that updating curriculum at least every few years would be important to me personally as an educator. Yeah. I think we usually do it every couple of years in our school, as far as I know.
Well, on the business side, there are things that have to be updated all the time anyways. I also am the co-author of Can I Deduct That? I'm updating it now, and I just had to change cable services to cable and streaming services, because that's a new thing. And mileage changes and rules change. Meals are now deductible at 100%. So I have to stay on top of that. The bigger deal for me is, and this is where I'm going to miss teaching in a professional training program, because the school I was teaching at just closed. They went out of business, is that being in touch with the people coming into the industry, those students that are in school, are telling me what our industry is going to be like in 5 to 10 years. And the anxiety somebody may have had around business 20 years ago, they don't have those same anxieties now. So, their relationship to business and their relationship to the subject and how they process things, that's where the updating comes for me, is when I meet the people who are about to become massage therapists and go, oh, they look at this from this angle, or they're fine with that. They've so gotten over that, but they're still freaked out about this. So that's research on business, kind of business is business, but kind of having my finger on the pulse of what our new therapists or about to be therapists more comfortable with and less comfortable with, and where can I step up then as a CE provider and start to support that.
All right. And then Jacqueline.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide experience as a CE taker that I have been through classes that are, both setups. Like one provider I've been with for a while has taught the same thing the same way for 35 years, or close to the same. And some of that comes from the reverence of these techniques, and if it's technique based, I don't see an issue with that. I've also seen people who are teaching outdated science. I mean, even in massage school, and I consider that I went to a great massage school in New York, but having a physiology and neuroscience background, like there's a lot that is not quite accurate. So it can, and then I see teachers that are pushing themselves of their own volition, because I don't really think that there's necessarily CE providers, you can tell me better than that, but I don't know if there's necessarily an incentive or a monetary incentive to do that, but people do it of their own volition to provide quality education. And so I also see that from the CE Institute in South Florida that I work for. Every course she's researching, finding new articles, updating. I still see, coming from a background perspective of having a PhD, I still see a great need for research literacy to be taught to students and providers, because it's one thing to be able to read an abstract, and it's another thing to be able to interpret an abstract really accurately. But I mean, we don't all have to be PhDs, but I think people who are doing research literacy should still keep pushing for that, even if there's not so much of a gathering behind you. And I think the Massage Therapy Foundation also does a great job of providing education on that.
All right.
So.
Mark?
Yeah, similar thoughts I have there. So I have a PhD in neuroscience. So to me, the whole industry is steeped in paradigms and assumptions that are, I would say they're 50 years old, but I mean, they're just made up stuff. So they're not even that. I mean, it's not so much to me about reading the most recent research. It's about just getting aligned with things that we know and we've known for a long time. And yeah, I mean, it takes a lot to become skilled at being able to read research papers. I mean, a lot of people think they might be savvy to talk about how massage works with cortisol, but that research is terrible, and that's just not true. So, you have to practically go to grad school to really be good at that kind of thing. And I don't know how we would, unless you've done enough of it, you can't really get maybe that good at it. So that's, to me, it's not so much about being up to the latest articles on the topic, but just being up to date on some just basic anatomy and changing the whole field in that respect. So, that's one of the ways that I kind of identify, I sell my school as being like cutting edge in these things and debunking what's usually being talked about. So I'd love to see that happening. But that's not really just a CE issue. That's like the whole industry.
All right. Okay, so the next topic I've got here, let's talk about free CEs offered by associations or employer created CEs. How do you guys feel about that? Do you feel like it affects your business? Do you feel like you, as a provider, should be able to offer that kind of thing exclusively without having it be going through another association or something like that? Just kind of curious what your feelings are on that.
I'll go ahead and jump in. I don't think that it impacts my business in a major way, but I've also kind of worked for those sort of companies before in the past, and I understand that usually they gear their education really towards their services and I suppose their menu. I've kind of created my classes based on what I know is is kind of out there in the field as sought after. And even if these companies also teach, the same material that I do, I've also really not seen it impact the number of students that I see in my classes, looking to get a different view or looking to get a different educator's, view on the subject, or looking to maybe get out of their place of employment for a little while and just seek a private instructor. So I haven't really seen it impact me too much, but even though I guess they are, I suppose, a competitor to my business, I think it is a good resource for many therapists that, maybe work part-time, or, they don't have as much resources to go take courses or to travel to another state or another country, perhaps, to seek out continued education. So I do see it as a benefit on that side. So, it also kind of keeps me on my toes. What am I putting out there that the students are going to want to come? They're not going to just settle for free CEs. They want to come and see, what I might have to offer. Especially if they, come back in a couple of years. What else new does Kevin have that I can learn that my work doesn't provide? So.
Mm-hmm. I know as a worker, I worked at one of the bigger franchises, and I was offered courses there in oncology, prenatal, all kinds of things. And my oncology course was like 4 hours. And then all of a sudden they were letting me massage cancer patients at my franchise, which probably wasn't the greatest thing ever, but I was a new massage therapist and I've been doing it for about like 2 months and didn't, And then the other thing that I've heard from employer related classes, kind of related to that, is that they only give you just kind of like just enough, to make you dangerous. So you feel like you can do it, but you're not quite sure still, right? So that's just one thing that I noticed. And I think that happens a lot. And so CE providers outside of that, I feel like can be more thorough. And that's an advantage to you as a CE provider. Like, use that as a benefit. Like, you can actually go through a very thorough class on hot stone rather than having, who's employed, they watch a 1 hour or 2 hour thing and then they, take a little quiz and then they're good to go. Right.
I think what you said is a good point. I mean, they'll give you just enough to really get your foot in the door and understand, it's not like a special oncology technique that I'm providing. It's education of that pathologies, or of those pathologies that you can differentiate. Okay, when is practice safe? Where is practice safe? What sort of techniques are and are not safe? And I think that's the important part, that I would always put that sort of responsibility on the therapist to make that right call. But I've experienced the same thing. I worked for another franchise before, and they said, oh, we have this 1 hour video, and then boom, you're good to go. And I said, I still don't really feel comfortable. I've got a brief introduction in the door, but it's often the same with massage schools. I mean, another thing that we're dealing with here in Arizona is the governor's review board trying to reduce our education hours for preliminary licensing. And this worries me in the instance for a couple of reasons, and then I understand their argument for a couple of other reasons. But licensing for massage therapy is primarily based on doing no harm for the industry, and the same thing can be said with continuing education. A short class might be good for introduction, and then you want to seek out that hands-on training to identify what are the safety parameters, what are the correct way to utilize this. I was just talking to a colleague this morning. When we were in school, it's like draping is the most complicated thing. And now that I've done it, tens of thousands of times, I could do it with my eyes closed, no problem. And the same thing can be said with say prenatal was a big one that kind of scared me when I was first licensed, is that, oh, it's dangerous and there's so many things that you can do and you can, cause miscarriage and all this stuff. And, through research, I know that that's not true. And I have come to learn through my own practice that, if I were to treat a pregnant woman as if, her body is kind of a danger zone, or her pregnancy is something to be ultra cautious about, it's kind of precautionary no matter what. Every pregnant woman is growing a new life in their body, and you have to be diligent to know what you're doing, where you're doing it, and all the factors that go into pregnancy massage. Same thing with hot stone massage. You know, when I was first getting started, I'm like, oh, hot heat feels so good. And, you know, it's super helpful for, you know, certain soft tissues that are maybe slower to respond than classic massage techniques. But, you know, a 1 hour video didn't really give me that experience. It wasn't until I took, you know, a weekend course or took, you know, more educators courses that I learned, oh, I didn't really think about that. And but in the end of the day, you know, I do find that as a detriment from the employer side, that saying, hey, take this 2 hour oncology course and now you can work with cancer patients. It's like, well, you understand what working with oncology, the oncology realm is going to look like, but you should really be taking something like 50 to 100 additional hours to work with oncology, especially because it's such a new, I would say within the past 50 years has the research just really exploded, and we still don't really get it all that well. But in the end of the day, you know, I think most therapists are out there, you know, to do good by their clients, by their patients, so yeah, I think that's where the detriment comes in, is that the employer says, no, you're good, where it should be the therapist to say, no, I'm good to do this.
And I think that's probably, you mentioned something that I think is the primary issue with employer developed training, is they're coming at it from a strictly market building point of view. What's like the minimum I can give you so now I can reach out to this market? And it's never clear to me how often these kind of decisions are being led by massage therapists who have been trained in the responsibility to the client being more than a 1 or 2 hour video. So I don't know that employer sponsored training is always bad, but I'm always going to look at it a little side eye, like, where are you coming on from this? What's your true motivation? Who made these decisions? And yeah, there are very few things you can genuinely learn and be competent with and touch a client's body in a 1 or 2 hour video. Just, there's not a lot. Right now, I do a lot of manual lymph drainage, especially for people after cosmetic surgery. And they're saying, well, I went to this place, they said they did like a lymph massage, but it's just an oversold Swedish massage, because like Swedish moves the lymph, so we'll call this like a relaxation lymph massage. I mean, they'll call it something else because it's a way to sell lymphatic services to people who want it without actually investing the time to learn it and be good at it. So they're looking at short-term goals. They're not looking at long-term goals. And I don't know about ABMP or AMTA with some of their courses, because I've taken very few of them. I would trust them maybe a little bit more because they are massage, well, okay, AMTA is not massage therapists talking to massage therapists, but in theory, that's coming from within our own industry. But the employer stuff, I'm a little more wary of.
All right, Valerie, did you have something there?
Two things. One, I absolutely agree with what everybody is saying about these short courses. And I also have worked in franchises, and I've worked in a school that was once a very wonderful, well thought of school that got bought out twice while I was working there. And you mentioned, Kevin, about cutting down hours, cutting down hours for massage school. I mean, we're responsible for these bodies that we're touching. And they want us to be done like an auto body school. In, out, 6 months, boom, bada, boom, bada, boom, and you're done. I left the school, needless to say. I said, I can't do this. But that is one way, unfortunately, that is going. And I know this isn't the forum for that, but it does read into the CE. Because yes, they're teaching 1 hour classes like pregnancy massage. I had someone work on me in the franchise who had taken the video, and then I was the body that he was going to do. And my neck for 2 weeks, I couldn't turn it. I wasn't the client, thank goodness. but still he injured my neck for 2 weeks. So I kind of think they go together. And I don't know, I've never watched ABMPs or AMTAs, CEs, but they're probably, like you said, a taste. Let me try this. This is really good. All right, how many people teach this? Which would then be the next, obvious thing, right? To go and do. So I'm completely with you all. And I really think it's unfortunate and sad the way things are being driven at this point, and it's all about money, not about us, not about training a wonderful massage therapists. So.
Yeah, the ABMP classes, I've taken a few of them, and they're just, they really are just very basic. It's a basic overview, and whatever it is that you take, you might get some contraindications, some basic technique, and then you have a little quiz or something, and then you get your certificate. But it's really just kind of like a short introduction. I think it would be good if more CE providers actually took their hands-on classes into the work environment and worked with employers directly. Are any of you guys doing that? Yeah, no?
So my plan last year was to do a lot of statewide traveling and offering my classes to different employers across the state. Unfortunately, I think, as with most people, last year changed everybody's plans on what they were going to be doing.
Yeah.
But it has been an interest of mine because just to kind of piggyback and not to hold up on this topic too much longer, but I think on this topic, I think kind of what a core solution that I can think of that might be beneficial is helping improve the public understanding of massage therapy and the advanced modalities and trainings that go along with massage therapy. Somebody comes into my office or into my practice and says, oh, well, I have blah, 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 blah. And then I can identify, okay, they're describing something that sounds like nerve pain. So I'm going to be orienting my work to be gearing towards that. And they never ask, what is your training? They just assume that, oh, he's a massage therapist and he's going to make me feel better. And that's the line that they draw. That's kind of what they equate massage therapy to. Or, when I see a pregnant client, they don't ask me, what kind of training do you have? Where did you receive? How long did you study this for? They don't ask these things. Even though I am there to tell them, I do have a specialty certification in prenatal massage. I've taken 3 different backgrounds with, over 30 hours of additional training. And, I've been practicing this for several years. And, I kind of keep track of my own, not like, I won't call it research, but of kind of my own practice and how the feedback forms work. But I've been trying to think of some ideas that might help the public recognition of massage. I spoke with the Governor's Review Council 2 years ago, and he said, well, I tried to find somebody who could help my grandmother recover from surgery. And when I went on the website, it's just all listed. Everybody's listed the same way. And so there's not really that conversation, like, what is your certification? How many hours have you taken? What do you know about this? And how can I trust that, that what you're talking about? Are you certified? Yes, I'm certified in 1 hour. That doesn't really help anybody. So, but I'll go ahead and leave it there.
All right. I don't know if Maria or Jacqueline's hand was up first. Jacqueline, do you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, just because it's so relevant to what Kevin said. So actually, I had just started a company for that purpose of having a marketplace where massage therapists where advanced and skilled can be kind of elevated. So, I mean, it's just a brand new startup, but the idea is there isn't a way for the public to easily recognize, what skilled is. They don't know, and they shouldn't have to know really what certifications we have, So I think that I've been thinking about that problem too, is like, how do we make it easy for the clients without having them have to research everything? Because it took me 6 years to find what I needed to help me, solve my pain issues. And so I think managed marketplaces are one of the ways to do that. And I'm working on that. We'll be eventually forming a review board on reviewing different types of certifications. I know this is one of the questions later on, but looking at the different types of certifications and whether they're hands-on, whether they're 100 hours or you watch a DVD for 1 hour and get a certificate. So that's something that I'm definitely trying to address. Thanks.
All right, and then Maria.
I had, that was actually something that I had done when I was teaching before I actually let my status lapse. I marketed to the franchises and had a really nice run with them for about a year. And what I loved about it is, first of all, everybody knew each other, so it was like this little subculture, which is nice. And then everybody took that information and used it collectively in the workplace. So I think it had more value. They were so enthusiastic. They were among the more enthusiastic people I've taught. And I liked that, and this was kind of before they were doing their own thing in-house, kind of in-service type education. I liked that I was bringing something in to challenge the way things were done. And I'm kind of sad that I don't think that's continuing to happen out there. I think it is going more in-house with more people.
Mhm.
I would love to see that come back because it was nice.
Yeah, me too. I think that would be good. Yeah, I know Elements with the franchise that I worked for, and they hired someone who did continuing education. So everything that they have is now pretty much in-house, and he develops all of it. He's a wonderful educator. Don't get me wrong, he's fabulous. But yeah, having other perspectives come in there seems like sometimes that would be a really good idea. And he does travel around to the franchises and stops in at different locations around the country to provide actual hands-on classes, but it might be a year or a year and a half before a franchise would actually see him to get a real hands-on, and then everything else is just those short video classes otherwise. So yeah. All right, so now I kind of want to switch off and talk about concerns that massage therapists have had with getting continuing education. And I know that we're probably all still required to get continuing education. So let's chat about that. I know that when I would I spent a lot of time listening in a lot of the groups, probably 3 or 4 months, and just like logging a lot of the complaints people were talking about. And when it comes to continuing education, one of the things that people were saying is they really want their CEUs to count for something. They want it to count for an advanced degree. They want it to count for higher wages. They want it to count for promotions at work, but we're not really seeing that those things are really counting for that, right? Like we have our basic education, but I've never been asked for my CE certificates when I applied for a job, even at, a major resort or something. They might say, I said, oh, okay, I do hot stone. They say, okay, well, give me your hot stone certificate, right? But they didn't ask like how many hours of CEs that I had, and over time you can accumulate thousands of hours of extra training. And what do you do with that, right? So I wanted to kind of have a conversation about that, and where can people go with all of this stacked up CE training? Do they just become an educator? Are there other avenues? What do you guys think about that?
Really quickly, I know Heal Well has an episode on new models for massage school, and in that they talk about the case for having perhaps 2 different types of licenses. One being like there's a lot of different ways people have thought about it, maybe a medical license or maybe just some kind of advanced license. We as a field have not figured that out yet. I don't know how much push is there for it. I'm all for it, for having some kind of differentiation. But I'd like to hear other people's perspectives. I see that as one possible solution.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the challenge to going anywhere with the CEs presumes that there's some consistency behind how continuing ed classes are developed. And the truth is NCBTMB will check your application, but they're not really evaluating your content. Not really. So they're not holding up a standard. They're not saying, hey, great idea. You need to do more with this before we can approve it. I don't see that FSMTB is going to do that either. And to ask a community college to say, give me credit because I took this class, the community college is going to go, what do I know about this class? And the answer is going to be nothing, because our industry doesn't have those kind of standards. And I don't know how to do that. I have no idea how to bring those standards up. But I mean, I really have, even in my imagination, I can't think of a way you would do that. I think for an employer, that's negotiated between the therapist and the employer. I mean, if I had an employer who said, the person I work for now, the practice I work for now, we are desperate to find somebody with more manual lymph drainage experience who's had 5 years of practice as a massage therapist. And if it were me, and I'd say, I'll tell you what, I will take this specialty MLD class, but then we need to talk about my pay. So part of it is we need to be able to negotiate with employers. And that's one of those, that whole basket of business skills that most of us don't have. So I don't know, the idea of going somewhere with your continuing ed is a practical, it's I'm not sure it's a practical expectation.
All right, Kevin.
I think you both brought up really good points on, you know, the certification and the continued ed, I guess, efficacy of what is an employer going to see in that certification? They see, hey, you can do the thing that I'm asking you to do. They don't see it as kind of going above and beyond what the minimum of your license requirements are. But I totally agree with what you said, Kelly, about, you know, again, bringing it back to what is the strength of the therapist in their communication, and really talking to their employer, talking to the individual who's, I guess, ultimately signing their checks, to say, this is what I've put into my career. This is the outcome that we can see as it relates to your business, and in turn my practice. And then this is kind of the dollar amount that I would like to see, whether it be commission or whatever it is that you agree to. I don't think a lot of therapists kind of have that communication style or that communication piece in with their initial training. And this is something that I put into all my classes. Yeah, I might be teaching a modality, but I also want to teach how we're going to efficiently communicate, not only to patients and clients, you know, what is this modality? Why am I recommending it to you? How is it going to affect the certain concerns that you're bringing into my office? But you know, but that strength in communication across all avenues, you know, talk to your employer, talk to your manager, whoever it is, and determine, this is what I feel I'm worth, and more importantly, back it up, right? If I've invested 100 hours in this modality, that is something that you primarily offer and market to your members and guests or clientele, then I think that speaks loudly. And if I have a very successful business in your doors, I think that speaks loudly. And I try to empower more therapists to have that conversation, because until more of us start becoming more confidently vocal and more confidently interactive with those places of employment, I think it's going to stay at a relative plateau until something really happens. And so since I became on the board too, you know, I was chatting with Stephanie a little bit. I've only known Stephanie for a little bit now. And, you know, I was really happy to see that you came and you spoke to the board in the past meeting, because there's not a whole lot of therapists that they've come to me and said, Kevin, what do we do with XYZ that's happening at the state? And I said, well, the best thing that you can do is come speak to us, because unless it's voiced by the public or the professional bodies, you know, I can't really speak on your behalf. You know, I'm on the dais. I can't, you know, show that my opinion is the opinion of the professional body here in the state. We need you to come speak. And the same thing when I, you know, at certain businesses where I've worked in the past, whether it be the chiropractor or a franchise, is I want my therapist to feel empowered to really put up kind of what they speak. And then one more thing, and I'll promise I'll pass it on. I looked into a couple of years ago kind of what Canadian and Australian massage therapists are doing with their licenses, and they actually, it's a 4-year program. They earn their degree in massage therapy, and they're implementing it in much the same way that PT and other like occupational type therapies are. And I think that's a fascinating thing. And so I would be interested to go and delve a little bit more back into that. I haven't revisited that again since then, but I would be interested to go and see what do those standards look like? What do those kind of licensing and degree requirements look like, and see what we might be able to borrow and start implementing here to raise that bar, because otherwise we're going to be stuck with legislatures understanding, oh, massage makes you feel better. Okay. And all you need to do is, not press on these points and, not stick an elbow in someone's neck. Okay. 500 hours it is. And then, we'll get more people in here and the economy will grow on top of that. And that's the battle I think that we're in, is therapists want to see the bar raised higher and legislators want to see it lower so that the economy can grow. But, it's a constant back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Danelle, did you have something to add there?
I think Maria was ahead of me. I saw her hand up
okay.
first.
Sorry, Maria, I didn't see that. Go ahead.
I can speak to this from two sides of it. In the workplace, it's tough, and I think the negotiating factor is key. But I've always been one to just walk in straight, at the job interview sometimes, and say, this is what I'm bringing. This is what I plan to bring. I believe in investing in my education. How does the compensation work out for that? And putting it right up front. And again, that gets back to, we're not really trained to do that. We're not really trained to walk in and hold our ground and quick to defer, especially working in a clinical setting, I think. The other side of it is, as someone who really is called to be an entrepreneur, is just negotiate, grow, and build your own. And the only way you build your own with any kind of effective foundation is to invest in that education. And I think somebody's either wired for that or they're not. And it's fine. I mean, some people just want to be an employee and have the ease of going in, doing a day's work and coming home. And then there are other people who really want to be in their power and make a difference and own all of what that means. So it's both.
All right, Danelle, go ahead.
What I was going to say is we also need to have, we need to train our employers to appreciate the work that massage therapists put in as well. It's more difficult when you have non-massage therapist employers and businesses, which we have a lot of in my state. And it's really hard to get through to them. The average pay for a massage therapist in Missouri has not changed in something like 30 years. And I don't know if it's that way other places as well, but that's how it is right here in the middle. For an example of how extra education is not really appreciated, at least in my area, the school I work for, I mentioned we have 4 campuses. One of them is in Kansas and 3 of them are in Missouri. Kansas does not have a statewide regulation yet, but they've been working on it for the last 5 years. 5 years ago, Missouri put a cap on the number of hours that you can offer for massage therapy. So the most you can possibly offer is 750 hours, which is what we do. But in Kansas, because there's no regulation, they can offer as many hours as they want to at that campus. And so they developed an AOS degree. So with this AOS degree, you essentially graduate with an associate's degree in massage therapy. They call it a master massage therapist. And in my experience, not my experience, but in secondhand experience for students who have completed this AOS degree, it does close to nothing for you as far as furthering your career, getting you more money, especially if you leave the state of Kansas, because it really doesn't mean much outside of that state where you earned the AOS degree. So I think that's really interesting. And I think it speaks to the employer's understanding of our education more than it does the student being able to, or not the therapist being able to speak up for their position.
Well, we've been talking about employers and we're really saying employers, I think, and we're talking about the franchises, but a significant chunk of our industry is also massage therapists hiring other massage therapists as contractors, as independent contractors. And that's a place where you are supposed to renegotiate your contract every year. how many people know that. And when I look at what does it take to really move our industry forward, I'm biased, I'll admit it, but a lot of it comes down to business. When I look at, for example, a multi-therapist practice that's hiring independent contractors, they don't know how to set up a payment scheme for their contractors that reflects different level of skills. It's like, well, I pay everybody the same. I have one contract. They don't know how to think about it. The therapist coming in looking for the contract work, they don't know how to think about it. So it comes down to, here's what I pay per massage, yes or no. I can't even begin to describe how screwed our future is if we don't become better business people. And I admit, very biased, but a lot of our future comes down to our ability to take care of ourselves financially, because the demand for massage is doing this and the number of massage therapists is doing this. And a lot of it comes down to business. And we love to talk about modalities as an industry because that's our sweet spot. That's our comfort zone. That's where our schools spent 95% of their energy. And then there's like this business thing over here on the side. I bring a lot of this back to the schools because schools teach people not just how to do massage, but how to think about being a massage therapist and how to think about our industry. Because that they lay the groundwork for how somebody moves through their career as a massage therapist. And a lot of it is how they frame what it means to be a massage therapist. And our schools are not doing everything they can for that. And I'm not sure they're taking full responsibility for how much they define what massage therapy is to their students going forward. And they definitely are not spending enough time teaching us how to be competent employees, contractors, or business owners. I've had more than one school owner go, well, I'm here to train massage therapists. I'm not here to train business owners. I'm like, really? What do you think your students are going to do with their education when they leave school? If your students plan to earn money with it, your students are business people. From the minute they walk through the door, they're walking in with a business intent. And if you're ignoring that, it's probably because you don't know how to deal with it either. Okay, I'm going to stop now because I can feel myself headed on a whole rant.
I love that passion though. That's awesome. And I completely agree with that. I have a business background and I was very successful at the start of my career because I had it. I was in administrative sales training for 15 years before I became a massage therapist. That was the number one thing that helped me advance in my career so quickly. So everybody should have it. Totally agreed. All right. So let's go ahead and move on a little bit. So I'm going to skip a couple of things because we're getting kind of like, we have about 30 minutes left. So I wanted to talk about, let's see. I want to talk about costs. How do you guys set your prices? Because I have heard that some massage therapists say, well, there's price gouging going on with continuing education. We can't decide not to take it. It's required for us to take it. And we just have to pay whatever they charge us, right? Is it really worth it? So having you guys on, I want you to kind of talk about like, how do you set your price? Do you try to make it affordable? Do you have different levels of pricing for different things? And just kind of explain that a little bit so people can kind of get an idea of how that works.
The rule of thumb that's being passed around, at least in DC and North Carolina, is that an hour of continuing ed is approximately worth $20 to $30. So that's what I'm seeing people use as their standard for how they price their continuing education. And I think sort of like, how we said for years, seated massage is $1 a minute. We've been saying that for 30 years. Seated massage should no longer be $1 a minute. But I think we are slow to process the need for price changes. I offer some short courses, less than an hour, that are $10 to $15, but you don't get any continuing ed for it because I can't sell a half an hour course. But if you're going to get continuing ed for it, because that is a lot of administrative work for me. That's the biggest problem with continuing ed is the back of the house administrative work involved, you're going to pay $25 to $30 an hour, period. That's the only way I can make it work for me. And I think the massage therapy students have no appreciation for what's involved behind the scenes in making continuing ed happen. Not a clue. Not a clue.
You want to talk about that a little bit? Like, what's your process? What do you have to go through to put out a course?
Well, first you've got to get your course organized, submitted, and approved. If you want continuing ed credits for it, there has to be some kind of quiz. And if it's an online class, I have to find a way to review that. I have to do all of the, where do I have your address? Do I have your phone number? Here's your, and especially with online, it's actually a little more complicated. How do I get your certificate to you? And then there's the whole marketing aggravation of the beloved butts in seats. And massage therapists, oh, I need this course, but I wasn't going to sign up for it till 24 hours before the course. So I have to make a go, no-go decision on a course several weeks before the course, especially if I'm renting space. I mean, so it's all of this. Just like running a massage practice, you have to have rental space, you have to have laundry. You know, it's the same, it's a parallel system. And our clients don't have any appreciation for that, nor do they really need to. But massage therapists don't have any sense of the administration of running a practice, trying to market a class, trying to make decisions about go, no go on it, trying to find affordable space in which to do a class, trying to connect with people online. Okay, how do I evaluate your quiz so that I can grant you the CEs, but I got to make sure I've got, I mean, just, it's an administrative kind of nightmare for me because you get down to those little details and I fall apart. And if I want to make it big and I'm trying to do that for 20, 30, 40 people, well, okay, how many days of massage work am I going to give up to handle the administration of these classes? So that's part of the whole world of making continuing ed just happen, just be available.
But it looks so effortless.
It's late on a Friday night. I am apparently just geared up for Rant City. You have been warned.
All right. Anybody else have any comments on that though? About sort of what you do, how you set your prices?
Yeah, so when I first started as a teacher, I was like, what do I charge for my classes? And I did market research. I looked into the teachers that I go see most often. I looked at other teachers that are, you know, in surrounding cities, maybe a couple hours away, and I just did some math. And I'm like, okay, they tend to set their prices, and it looks like, you know, and Kelly, I'm right there with you. It looks like, you know, $20 to $30 per credit hour. And then so I sat there and I thought to myself, okay, my classes right now are intro based. You know, I'm a new teacher. If I set my prices the same, would it be as impactful to the people that wanted it there? Would I even get people that want to take my classes being a new teacher? And so I made a determination and was like, you know what, I'm going to set my classes a little bit lower. Some of my classes are like $12 to $20 per credit hour. The ones that particularly Hot Stone, there's a lot more supply and setup and process, especially if I'm traveling or if I'm teaching, you know, down in Tucson. That's a 2-hour drive down there with a trunk full of supplies. And then I have to get there an hour ahead of time. I got to set everything up. I got to make sure that I'm centered and grounded before I actually teach my class. And then after a full 8-hour class, I got to pack things up and drive them home if I'm not staying there, or I got to make sure that everything is set up. So that class, there's a lot more that goes into it. And so it tends to be more closer to like 20 to 25 per credit hour. But I think, you know, some of the teachers out there, I've taken Eric Dalton's classes with myoskeletal, and I've looked into Tom Myers' stuff with the myofascial stuff. It's fascinating to me. Tom Myers is a little bit out of my price range right now, but Eric Dalton was still that, you know, it was like 15 to 25 per credit hour. Tom Myers is a little bit further beyond that. It's several $1,000s to take his courses, but he's like at the bleeding edge. He's like a guy that's like getting, you know, the myofascial system to be integrated into anatomy classes coming up in the next few years. It's cool stuff. So, and just listening to him, I'm just starry-eyed listening to the guy, and I'm just like, okay, you know, once I get, you know, couple $1,000s to just drop on a class, I'm going to do it, because that's worth it to me. But so I was, again, I'm kind of like Kelly. I'll get a long-winded answer just going off on something because it's an interesting topic to me. But I think that's the other flip side of an employee or an employer offering courses, is that maybe therapists are used to getting these free classes every year and that are updated every year, and then oh well, why should I pay for continued ed? Well, you're going to always have those people, but you're always going to have those people too that said, well, I'm here just to be here because I have to be. But then by the end of the day, they're going to like, wow, I'm glad I did show up and I did learn something, and thank you for this. So it just comes with being a therapist. We're so many different types of people. We're all kind of in the same game, but it's a never-ending roller coaster, that's for sure. But I did do market research when setting my prices, and that's what I'll do in the future.
All right, Jacqueline, go ahead.
So I think this has relevance to just massage therapists setting their prices for their own service, and how we use a per hour fee schedule. Most of us, I'm sure Kelly has lots of insight on that. And I know I was pushed by my business coach to go for a solutions-based pricing system, which I still have not figured out how to communicate to clients. And I wonder if CE providers, especially Kelly, wonder what you think about different models of selling other than the thinking of it as an hour base.
Sweetie, there's not enough time left in this Zoom call for me to go off on that. I'm just going to tell you now. That's a whole conversation. And Kevin, you made the rookie mistake. You don't underprice yourself because you're new. You price yourself based on the value you are giving. And we're not going to go any further than that because, like I said, I'm already in rant zone.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on a little bit. We'll go to our next topic. So I just want have any of you guys, as a massage therapist, what has been your experience? Have you had any issues getting the CE classes that you want? So we'll talk about that really quick. Anybody on that one?
I typically find myself taking classes that I can find. I generally haven't gone searching for certain classes, except with one exception, with the neuromuscular training. But I was lucky that it was right there in my employer's building. But generally, what's available near me, what looks cool that might be coming through my area, I just go for that. And don't spend a whole lot of time searching for specifics. I find that a lot with my students as well. They'll give me the same kind of feedback.
Mm-hmm. I know there was a specialty training that I was looking at, like I wanted to learn Batsu, and I was like, oh, this looks really cool. I want to learn this. And the only place where I could find to take the class was in California. And the classes, I remember 4 or 5 different modules, and it was very expensive to learn that. And I couldn't find anybody locally that I could learn it from. So I've had issues like that, where I would have to save up and travel, to take the classes that I wanted to take. But we do have a lot of really great local classes here too, and good local providers, to always find something. But it's like the things that you might really want, you really do need to save your money and, make a plan even a year in advance to take the course that you really want sometimes.
Yeah, for me, is finding out who all my options are, because I hear about things sort of on the fly. A massage therapist will mention, oh, I did that over at from this provider. I'm like, oh, I hadn't heard about them. Or there's so much of it that becomes word of mouth. That's a challenge when you don't know what you should be looking for or where to look. That's been the biggest challenge. We're lucky here in North Carolina. There's a couple that put out it's kind of like they put out a catalog twice a year of continuing ed classes being offered in by North Carolina providers. And you pay to advertise your stuff in there, but you find stuff that I never would have even thought to look for, but found it in there. That would be really helpful. I should take that class. but I don't know that anybody else has that. I've only seen it in North Carolina. So yeah, it's generally finding out what's available.
I definitely wish that all states had that. I know when I was a lead working at Element, I had to just figure out where all the CE classes were, and I tried to put together a listing of people in our local area, and it took me a while to pull that information together. There's no place to just go say, well, okay, what are all the CEs here? Let's find it, So having something like that would be awesome. I think that would really help in people seeking out continuing education in their states. Maybe that's something that we could talk further about later, because that's a really good idea.
One idea that I had for kind of when social restrictions are a little bit easier to navigate, I've had some colleagues and coworkers that reach out to me from Tucson and says, "Hey, Kevin, will you come down here to teach a class? Because 6 of us driving up to Phoenix is going to be harder to navigate. It's more expensive for all of us." And I was like, well, it's a 12-hour day to go teach a full day class, and then if I need to teach a 2-day course, then I'm staying for a room. But that was a personal choice of mine to say, you know what, it would be better for me to make that trip to invest in these therapists who were looking for my material than it is for 6 of them to drive up and to get a hotel and to stay 2 days. And so I've considered getting with some colleagues of mine to reach out to some of these big names that only teach in Northern California, or states that are more than a day's drive, or the courses that are 4 or 5 days, and say, hey, maybe it would be beneficial for this provider to visit us. And, if we can ensure that we have enough people that are willing to take this class, maybe this person will come to us to visit and teach this class, and to kind of spread that from here. And a lot of those big name people, they take on kind of apprentices, or they take on educators underneath them to teach their course material in the state. And I'm just like, okay, great. This would be a great way to bring this to a state that they don't yet visit. So that's something I've been thinking about this year. Hopefully I can get enough people to maybe bug one of these big names to come down here and teach us some really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, that would be nice. All right. So the next topic I wanted to kind of talk about is women in leadership as CE providers. Now, one of the things that I've noticed, and I saw a whole conversation about it in one of the groups just recently, so I wanted to kind of put this in here and get some ideas. How can we get more female therapists to assume leadership roles as CE providers? I feel like that a lot of people had suggested the female LMTs really come up as maybe mentors. They come up as coaches. We see a lot of, business coaches and massage therapy that are females. And then we have a lot of these male CE providers like Eric Dalton, Whitney Lowe. These are the guys that are like making the most money in continuing education. They've been doing it for such a long time. And so do you guys have any thoughts on how we might get more women to be encouraged to come and do this and kind of catapult them into the forefront in our industry?
So I had a conversation a couple of years ago with, this is embarrassing. She teaches scar release. She's out of New York. And she was trying to move up more in those national ranks. And she said there was a lot of really active pushback and a lot of really active sexism. And the boys didn't want to make room. They did not want to make room for her. And I mean, they own the field. I think this is one where I would like to see, like I said, I would like to see our professional organizations lift up and support and help sort of incubate smaller CE providers. I think that's an opportunity for our professional associations to do more than they're doing, to be a little more proactive, and not just about lifting women in leadership, but lifting BIPOC people. I mean, Black, Indigenous, people of color, really, they're going to have to do it. They don't have to, but they could do a lot. They're in a unique position to do a lot to help this happen because they have national reach. When you look at some of the big names in our field, they aren't massage therapists. They were making their money as chiropractors and osteopaths and everything else, which is why they could afford to build these programs. That's kind of my assumption, but I'm going to go with that because they tend to make more money than massage therapists did. it's a hard scramble to move up and get that kind of national visibility. And I'd like to see our professional associations acknowledge that and take more investment in it.
Yeah. Jacqueline, you have something about
Yeah.
that?
So I just finished an all-female business accelerator, a startup accelerator, and I think that this is the same issue. We talked a lot about gender differences and the startup world, and it's the same case there. It's like 1 or 2% of venture capital goes to women, 7% of angel investors, the smaller level investors, are female, and so the solutions there are that were offered are kind of twofold. One is just number of bodies, because there's some research from Babson College and Harvard that people just elevate and they pick who they are like. So that may go with people starting businesses together, running CE programs together, starting massage schools, or choosing who they're going to use for their provider, or bringing leaders together. So the more we just over time shift the numbers, the more women will be there. So, but then there's also just a huge movement of not in the massage field, but in the startup world, of grants specifically for women-owned businesses and specifically for minority-owned businesses. And so there's no reason that we can't do that here now, because the businesses for like CE providers are so small, and our organizations are nonprofit. Maybe it's harder to do that in the field, but it's not impossible. But in the startup world, there's just and actually, as CE providers, or massage therapists, we're businesses too, like even solo providers, and there's no reason they can't apply for grants. Like there's I Fund Women. There are ones I know are more oriented towards startups that are kind of like not solopreneur, but there are a lot of grants out there. The Amber Grant is one of them, WomenNet, and I think 1863 Ventures. But again, the ones I know are a little bit more like larger organizations. But there are also, I really encourage massage therapists to be looking for grants. And then as far as how we as an industry create grants to elevate these people, I'm not sure, but other business fields do it and are really starting to make that.
All right. Anybody else have any comments on that? Okay. All right.
I don't know if it's particularly in line with what you're looking for, but being a male in a predominantly female oriented career field really kind of pushed me to, one, enhance my professionalism, and two, ensure that my communication styles with my patients and colleagues were very strong. I was actually really curious to know kind of where that source data that you're talking about comes from, because when I went and looked on the CE search lists, I saw that there was about that same 70-30 split, but that we see with female CE providers, at least in Arizona, compared to male CE providers. But since you kind of expand on the subject a little bit more, I believe that you are right. Those kind of big names that are out there are predominantly male, and so I am curious to know, and kind of, Kelly, what you said intrigued me a little bit. What are those kind of gatekeeping mechanisms that are preventing more large name kind of female? Because I definitely know that would, you like you had mentioned, I think, Jacqueline, you said that people want to work with and people want to learn from people that they like, or people that they are like. And I think that would really help a lot of, kind of females kind of at the full-time level kind of elevate themselves and say, hey, maybe I can do this too. And then we might see that sort of wave kind of follow that. So, I don't really have a whole lot of perspective on that, and probably understandably so.
We were also encouraged, incidentally, to take on behaviors of mass. This is like in a pitch room. I don't know how you do this in a documentation status, but to take on masculine behaviors for the purpose of of being authoritative. People just have those cognitive biases. Now, a lot of the women in the accelerator had issues with, not seeming authentic, but that is just, there is published data on when people have those types of, when they change their kind of postures and behaviors, they have different reactions and they get different questions too.
I almost feel like we need some kind of training for that. I remember in school, there was like, they teach you, let's do the power pose, right? So then you're feeling a little bit more powerful when you do your intake forms. But having some sort of training course on that would probably be a really good idea. Just how do you project an authoritative stance, right? So I'm going to write that down. It's an actually great idea. All right. And then the last thing that I want to talk about, because we just have a few minutes here, is the future of continuing education. So where do you guys see things going for the future? And I want to kind of talk about professional development. It's a thing that I'm really passionate about. I am passionate about teaching massage therapists more business, more retail sales experience. I have that experience behind me. I want to put that out there. I also want to teach about the problems in our field, and the things that we can do, like concrete action steps to get beyond this as therapists. So how can we increase people's recognition of professional development as being important in our field? Like, it's not just all about hands-on. It's not just all about what happens at the table. I think that 70% of it is what happens beyond the table, before the person gets on the table, when they get off the table, your treatment plans, how much you really understand about what you're doing as far as your industry goes, selling, management. There's a lot that goes into this. So how do we get more therapists interested in that? And then how can we improve continuing education now and in the future? Like, what's new on the horizon? What's coming? Is there anything you're excited about? So let's talk about that.
Something that got me really interested in this when I first became a teacher was reaching out to other school curriculums, like the teachers that are bringing on new licensees, not the continuing education forum. And so I started being involved with different PACs around the state and different advisory groups, speaking and building the relationship with the teachers themselves, so that I could help them, identify maybe where are they struggling with their students, versus, in my position as a development manager and an education manager is, where are we seeing new therapists, new licensees struggling earlier in their career? And it's exactly what you said, Stephanie. It's a lot of that stuff with, it's a lot of the stuff that happens kind of outside the therapy room. Everybody has a really good grasp on the modalities themselves, has a really good grasp on actually the massage, but it's that pre-session intake, it's that communication piece, it's that post-session, recommendation. It's the entire experience of trusting this person as my manual body care therapist, or whatever the term needs to be understood as, kind of moving beyond massage. And this is even kind of where my vocabulary tends to change a little bit, so that my absorption of this can be shared with more teachers or public or individuals or even licensees. Is, what, and my mentor said it to me the best. He's like, he said, you can teach anybody to massage something. He's like, but you can't teach anybody to be a therapist. And a massage therapist puts both of those things together in the most successful way. And I think that was such an easy way to understand, how he as a 20+ year therapist has been so successful. As far as continued ed, I think that just keeping material fresh and keep, kind of like the topics of this meeting have been, keeping it fresh and keeping it up to date, and keeping it interesting for the people that are out there wanting to take our classes. But I think kind of in a non-continued ed forum, in my interest is really keeping up the relationship with the schools. I have contacts at 9 of the schools here in Arizona. I consider, about half of them my close colleagues, and that I confide in when I'm looking for advice from more experienced therapists than myself. And I think it's because of that relationship building that they're able to say, hey, what are you seeing in some of the people that you're teaching and some of the people that you're training, and how can we put that solution, how can we kind of inject that into our curriculums at the base level so that they start off higher up than we did? How can they start off in a better position than we did when we were freshly licensed? And so that's kind of where I'm leaning towards. The future of the education is not necessarily only in continuing ed, but also at that primary education level.
Yeah, I'm going to push back on the schools, because at this point, like I said, they'll spend 90% of their energy teaching you hands-on skills and table skills, and everything else gets lumped into that other 10%. So our professional training programs have to change, because they're also setting expectations about what continuing ed is. I think we need to quit talking about continuing ed in the same conversation where we talk about licensing. So if you're having a course, if you're having a class and we're talking about all the licensing requirements, and you'll have to get continuing ed for your licensing, now students have said continuing ed exists to get my license. Not continuing ed is what I do as part of professional growth and development and being a better and better massage therapist. It's what I do to fulfill my legal obligations. So I'm pushing a lot of stuff back on professional training programs, because I think their expectations and their worldview about what it means to be a massage therapist after you get out of school is 15 to 20 years behind us. They're not really accepting the reality, and they're not accepting our future, which has to be a lot of things like financial stability. I think as continuing ed providers, we can do things like be more engaged in the organization AFMTE, which is the Alliance for Massage Therapy Educators. They're heavily focused on professional training programs, but there's a growing sort of cohort within that of continuing ed providers. And that's where continuing ed providers and school leaders can meet. There's also the AMTA Council of Schools, or the School Summit, and ABMP does something about that too. So there are organizations nationally that are addressing education. And we have to be the ones going, education is not just what happens in a massage school. It's everything that happens after massage school too. So that's part of our responsibility. We can also step up and improve our teaching skills. AFMTE is sponsoring a teacher certification program where you can become a certified teacher. And it's sort of like board certification. You present all this stuff, and there's growing opportunities to take teacher training. And most CE providers learned how to be teachers on the fly. That would include me. And I'm starting a teacher training program in April, because I'm like, there's too many holes in I'm good. I am good at what I do. I'm just going to say that, because my students love me. But there are holes. There are huge gaping holes in my knowledge about what it takes to be a good instructor. So those are some of the things I think that step us up, and we need to, as continuing ed providers, and we need to be pushing NCBTMB, and we need to be talking to FSMTB, and we need to be engaged with them. I don't know actually what that looks like beyond sort of sending them bitching and moaning letters. That's probably not the best approach. It's just what I think of some days. And I do think we need within our own states to keep an eye on what's happening with licensing, because licensing defines, if you've got licensing, how continuing ed is managed. There are states where you cannot submit business courses for your license renewal. I can give you CEs, I can teach you the class. You can't submit it because the way the regulations were written, business doesn't count. So doing what you're doing, Kevin, and being involved as much as we are able, or at least keeping an eye on what's happening at the state level with licensing and regulation. It's a lot. It's what we do in our spare time, because we've all got so much of that. But those are some of my thoughts on that. And just like massage therapists, continuing ed providers need to be financially stable as well. Whatever that means, however your life as a continuing ed provider fits into your larger income picture, it's a business, and you deserve to make some income from it too, in a way that makes sense. And okay, here I'm on the rant ramp. So
All right, Maria, you go ahead and then we're going to wrap it up. Okay.
I also am going to reference the schools. I attended a school that was big on cultivation of chi and cultivation of the therapist. And I hate to say it this way, but the program was designed to weed people out in first semester, and it was an AOS program. And I taught at that school as well. And our rule of thumb was the best students that made it to the third floor in clinic were the ones that excelled Tai Chi and Qigong. And as someone else here, I think it was Kelly, said that, Kevin maybe said it, everything else can be taught. Everything else is, I hate to say just technique, but formation of the therapist is everything. And formation of the therapist, if it doesn't happen in your foundational programs, can continue to be taught in continuing ed classes, and we get to model it. And I think without that, I kind of shun some of what I see going on out there because I do come from a different state. And I do find myself kind of retreating a little bit because some things just make me uncomfortable because it's a little too soft. And I think it could really change the profession.
All right. Anybody else have anything before I wrap it up? No? Good. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. I think this was an awesome meeting. I think that we had so many like brilliant ideas that came out of this. This is really good. I am going to post this on YouTube. So this will be on our YouTube channel for USO LMT. If anybody wants to know more about the organization, it's www.usolmt.com. Memberships are open right now. It's only $10 a month to join. And I'm opening it up to massage therapy students, massage therapists that are based in the United States who are licensed right now, massage educators, LMT business owners, and then massage co-ops. So the whole point is to get some funding for this organization, and it's going to be self-funded so that we can get together and start talking about some of these issues. And then once we have enough numbers, we will be able to form bridges with our other associations like AFMTE and FSMTB, and we can respond collectively. Right? Because when we're writing, one person's writing a bitch and moan letter and we're trying to get a whole bunch of people to do that, it's a little bit harder than if we're all together and we're saying, here, this is us and this is our organization and we have this many people here and this is what we think. Right? So I feel like this will be a lot better, and then we can just kind of build that bridge as a collective entity to get what we feel, what we want for our future into the hands of the other associations. So thank you guys so much. And I will let you know if we're going to do anything like this in the future, but this is really great. So thank you all for coming on.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody have a great night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Stephanie.
Bye.